The term superstar gets used a lot in sports, but just what defines a superstar player in the NHL? And do the Hurricanes have one on their roster currently? We will be discussing that in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Tuesday afternoon. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Andrew Schnittker. How are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing great. It's good to be getting into some little hot takery here today on this first day of August.
Yes, it is finally August. The year is flying by. And this is something that we got the idea from this for this episode yesterday when you tweeted out something about superstar players. And I was like, this is something we could really dive into on the show. And so I really do want to get your first thoughts before we start diving into this. At the end of the day, what makes a player a superstar in the National Hockey League?
Yeah, it's funny. This actually started with baseball because I said that somebody claimed that, NC State's MLB alums like Trey Turner, Carlos Rodon, Patrick Bailey, Andrew Kisner are superstars. And I said, no, they're not. At his peak, I think Trey Turner was close to being a superstar. And as you might expect, NC State fans got mad at me. So yeah, I think superstar, I think it's pretty uniform across all sports. I think part of my definition is going to make the group of superstars in the NHL smaller than it is in the other major sport. Like talking big four, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL in North America. Obviously, you could get into a whole host of arguments about European soccer players and whatnot. We're not going to go there today. Obviously, it's a great player. It's a highly productive player. One, at or near the top of the league in terms of scoring, point production. It's somebody who's at or near the top of their position group, and it's somebody recognizable. It's a recognizable brand. It's somebody that not even just casual, like in the NHL, for example. And this is why I think the NHL's group of superstars is very, very small. Somebody that casual hockey fans and casual sports fans know of and might be willing to turn on a game to watch this player. They're going to buy tickets to a game when this specific player is in town. I think part of the lack of superstars in the NHL is the league's fault, because for years and years and years, I don't think I've talked about this on this show before, but I've talked about it on both, just in general before. The NHL is terrible at marketing its star players. I mean, terrible. I mean, like Connor McDavid is not as much of a recognizable name as he should be in the entirety of the sports world. And that's just inexcusable. I think the fact that the NHL has the TV deals with ESPN and TNT now makes the league and makes the star players more visible. And especially with ESPN's marketing specifically, I think things will keep getting better in that regard. But I think that's where we are right now. And again, I think that's why the NHL's group of superstars is small, because there's a difference and a distinction that needs to be made between like a superstar player and a star player. A star player, there's lots of stars, obviously. Really, pretty much most teams have one. I mean, it's a really good player, really productive player, but not quite at that like peak production, peak brand name level. Again, I don't think you have to take brand name into account when you're just talking about regular stars. You do with superstars.
Yeah, I agree there. I definitely think there is that distinction, because you look at a star player, that's going to be, the the people that are, you know, on the arena, on the billboards in that particular city, but and they're essentially going to be, the face of the franchise. But then you get into the superstar level. That's when you're seeing them, like you said, non-hockey fans know him. Again, like you said, Connor McDavid, he should be more well known. But folks know who Sidney Crosby is. They know who Alex Ovechkin is. They know who Wayne Gretzky is. Those are superstars. When you have the general ESPN commercials, and you have the hockey players in there, the guys there, those are the superstars, the ones that are essentially the face of the league, not the face of one particular franchise. I definitely think that's a big distinction there, and I totally agree the NHL has not been good at marketing their stars, because there are definitely guys in the league that could be superstars, if they were getting put out there more than what they are. Another guy mentioned the that we should have mentioned in the superstar level. I think Austin Matthews. I think he's at that level. Another guy like McDavid should probably be marketed more than he is, but he's another one of those guys that you tend to see him in the general league advertising. But and I do think one thing that sometimes hinders guys from reaching that superstar level, aside from the league marketing, is sometimes the market sizes. Canadian markets are obviously a bit different. They are, hockey's a lot bigger up in Canada than it is here in the States. So, while Edmonton may be smaller than, LA, obviously, but you have that superstar player in Connor McDavid there. Everyone knows him. Whereas opposed to, a team like, in Anaheim or Raleigh or Columbus, or, these smaller markets can be a little bit harder to market. And sometimes teams really got to capture lightning in a bottle, kind of like how the Hurricanes did back in 2019 with the storm surge, that really, catching on, grabbing headlines, and, putting eyes on the franchise and making the franchise more well known. And of course, one thing, with this is the team's gotta be good. I that's kind of a pretty basic thing. But if a team is not good, then no one's gonna be watching. I know that's kind of mean, but
No, you're right. I mean, you're
yeah.
absolutely right.
That's only gonna happen every now and again. Of you have the one good player on a bad team. Yeah, they're gonna grab all the headlines. You had similar like Eric Carlson last year. I know we talked about him a lot this off season, but Norris Trophy on a San Jose team that was not good. He had 100+ points. That isn't always gonna happen. But yeah, I definitely think there's definitely a distinction between star player and superstar player for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if we're using visibility as a criteria for superstar, which I think you absolutely should, and it's part of what. And again, I think because ultimately, I think superstar should be a very exclusive, very narrowly defined term. Like Canes fans will sometimes get mad at me if I'm like, no, Sebastian Aho's not a superstar. We'll get to this in our last segment. I think there's legitimately probably 4 or 5 superstars in the entire NHL right now.
Yeah.
And the other argument that some people like to make is that, oh, you should look at how much they're being paid to determine who's no, nope. Guys get overpaid all the time. People use that argument with me yesterday with the Trey Turner Phillies contract. That could end up being an all-time terrible contract. I mean, if we're looking at how much they get paid, then Rick DiPietro was a superstar. Like
Hmm.
Wade Redden was a superstar. That
Mhm.
that is not part of the equation for me and never will be.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a small factor, because yeah, your superstar players, they're gonna be the ones getting the bag, plain and
Sure.
simple. You know, like your guy Patrick Mahomes.
But
He's gonna get the bag, but it's definitely
but by this
not a big criteria because simply, like you said, guys get overpaid in all sports all the time. So that's not really something that you can be really looking at.
well, and like by the same token, like what you just said, like Mahomes was already a superstar when he
Mhm.
was on his rookie contract before he
True.
got the bag. So that's the other side of it. Like I think you would look at that more in football than any other sport. Like the truly elite quarterbacks, like you're gonna know that they're truly elite, and maybe even that they're a suit like Josh. I think Josh Allen was a superstar before his rookie contract. Joe Burrow is still on his rookie contract.
Mhm.
I think he's a superstar. Justin Jefferson,
Mhm.
receiver for the Vikings, still
Yeah.
on his rookie contract. I think he's a superstar. However, this is not locked on NFL superstars, so I will stop there.
Yeah, and we are going to dive into Hurricanes with superstar potential right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, you guys know that we love baseball here on Locked On Hurricanes. And if you're wanting to take your first swing at betting on the MLB, use FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet 20 bucks and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you're like a Tigers fan, Red Sox fan, or Royals fan like us, you can win money on your teams even if they're breaking your heart. That's 200 you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. There's no better place to bet on the MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So sign up today and visit fanduel.com/locked on to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Now, diving back into the superstar debate. And, as you said earlier, you think, Sebastian Aho is not a superstar. And I agree with that. I definitely think he is a star player for sure. He is,
Absolutely.
one of the faces of the Carolina Hurricanes. So to say he is not a star is foolish. But, superstar, it's not at that level yet. I do think he definitely has the potential to be there. I really do. I think you could see him in the NHL commercials. When they're advertising stuff on ESPN and TNT. Yeah, you could definitely see him there. Same with Andrei Svechnikov and Jacob Slavin. I think these are guys that have that potential, but I think at the end of the day, it is really just coming down to the marketing aspect of it, league wide. The Hurricanes, they do a good job of marketing their guys here in Raleigh and the surrounding area. They do a good job doing it for the most part, but the league as a whole, not so much.
Yeah, I do think both. I'm going to say, unfortunately, I don't think, based on the criteria we've discussed, I don't think Jacob Slavin's going to be a superstar ever just because he's not like your flashy, like scoring
Yeah,
defenseman. He's a great player and he's better than a lot of those flashy scoring defensemen, but we're probably not going to get to a point where like a casual fan is like, oh, I got to tune in and
true.
see Jacob Slavin out there, breaking up plays with his stick tonight. Canes fans know that, and diehard, not even necessarily diehard, like
Just hockey fans
knowledgeable,
in general.
hardcore hockey fans know that. Like, but I just don't think he's ever going to be that marketed guy that ticket sell again. I'm not talking about Canes fans. I'm not talking about solidified hockey fans. I think Aho and Svechnikov, yes, both have that potential. Like you talked about, unfortunately, they're kind of at the mercy of the NHL getting much better at marketing its star players and broadening the range of star players that it chooses to market. I think the Hurricanes winning a Stanley Cup would help
Mhm.
that. I also think both of them need to take another step in terms of their production. Like Sebastian Aho right now is a consistent 70 to 80 point player. That's great. That's awesome. That's exactly what you want out of your number one center. For me, I'm never going to call that player a superstar though. He's got to ascend a little bit more
Mhm.
to the like 90 to 100 point plateau, and he could. I mean, he's 26, he's entering his prime. He
Mhm.
could have a little bit more to give, especially you get a fully healthy season from Andrei Svechnikov playing next to him, or Seth Jarvis keeps taking steps and is playing next to him, or the Hurricanes add somebody else. With Svechnikov, it feels like, last year it felt like he was on his way before he got hurt, but it feels like we're still waiting for him to have that year where he puts it all together, where he hits 40 goals or even 40 to 50. And if he can get to that level consistently, and I think he has all the tools to do it with his shot, the way he can get the puck to the net, his power game, to be that consistent, 40 plus goal scorer. But to me, he's got to get there before we can even start having the conversation of him breaking into that superstar tier.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I think for the Hurricanes to have a superstar, and again, this isn't me knocking any player, and this I'd probably I'd look at the vast majority of teams in the NHL right now and say that they don't have a superstar, because again, I think that's such a small group. And I think that the NHL still needs to make huge leaps and bounds in terms of marketing and visibility for its star players and getting them in front of the casual sports fan more and more. And I'm just not sure if that's going to happen to the level that it needs to for the
Mhm.
Hurricanes to have a superstar play. And look, they don't need a true. I mean, like the
Yeah.
Vegas Golden Knights don't have a superstar, but look how that worked out for them. I mean,
Yeah.
the I might say the Colorado Avalanche had a superstar or two, maybe. Um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have really said, especially at this point in his career, I don't think Steven Stamkos is one. So I'm not sure I would have said the Lightning had a superstar. Maybe Kucherov when he's
Yeah, I'd
healthy.
say
Maybe
Kucherov.
Vasilevsky.
Yeah, those 2
Um,
for sure.
but there's plenty of teams that have won the cup without superstars
Mhm.
by the definition that we're talking about. So this isn't us saying that not having any superstars is any sort of a knock against the Hurricanes, because again, part of that is completely outside their control and their players' control. I do think that the players that we're talking about as potential superstars haven't reached the level of production that I feel
Mhm.
like superstars need to have yet. But again, I mean, they don't have to for the Hurricanes to win. They have to be superstars, but that's kind of a thing of like, it would be nice, but it's not something the Hurricanes need.
Yeah, I agree, and, I'm, sitting here, thinking, about the Hurricanes roster. I do agree with you with Jacob Slavin, because simply, because of the style of game he plays. Everyone wants, the highlight reel plays, scoring the goals or these crazy stops or something like that, and that's not Jacob Slavin. So, he deserves to be, because he is that good, but simply, with the way he plays, not really gonna happen in this day and age. Um, Again, like we said, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, those guys totally have superstar potential written all over them. And another guy, that I was thinking about here is one you mentioned is Seth Jarvis. Yeah, he's still incredibly young. He just turned 21 years old, and he's already really stinking good in the NHL, and he's only gonna get better from here. And one thing I we didn't talk about in what makes a superstar is, I do think, they need to have a decent personality, a personality that can be marketed. You're not going to want to throw a jerk, out in front of a camera and do PR work and media tours. You're not going to want to do that. No. And Seth Jarvis, he has, a phenomenal personality. Canes fans, you guys know that. We we see, all the stuff, on social media of the Hurricanes posting about Seth Jarvis. Heck, we see the stuff he posts. And in that way, he's extremely, extremely marketable. And if he continues to develop the way he is, and gets to that production level that we talked about, I really do think he's a guy that could really, be a face that the NHL is putting out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think unless you're like Connor McDavid putting up 150
Yeah.
points a year, and then you can get away with having the personality of a napkin. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think personality should be part of it. I mean, like I talked about guys in the NFL like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen,
Mhm.
Joe Burrow. All those are three extremely likable guys
Yeah.
too. We don't get is hockey's a little different because we just don't get to see personality shine through as much because we're still so much like throughout hockey culture. It just hasn't been encouraged.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. Unless he makes a stratospheric leap, I would
Mhm.
bet heavily against Seth Jarvis becoming a superstar level player. But if he does, the Hurricanes have probably won at least one Stanley Cup. So
Yeah.
there is that.
Yeah, all of the potential is there for these guys, and you never know, something can happen, you know, and a guy that we're not even talking about today, could be the next superstar for the Carolina Hurricanes. You just never really know with this kind of stuff. Obviously, the bigger names, those are the obvious ones to talk about. But you've seen it across sports, of guys and girls that get drafted really late, or are undrafted free agents, and then they just ascend into superstardom. I know you're obviously not a fan, but Tom Brady, drafted super, super late, becomes, greatest of all time,
Oh, sure.
So,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. You never really know how things are going to shake out. But the Hurricanes, they have guys on their roster and in their system that could totally be superstars for them one day. But it's just something you gotta wait and see how it pans out. But we've talked about some guys already today in the NHL that we feel are superstars, and we will continue that conversation right after this quick break, folks. All right, folks, we are back, and now it's time. We've talked about guys on the Hurricanes that have that superstar potential and what makes a superstar, and we're gonna look around the league at who we feel are the superstars in the NHL right now. Obviously, we've already mentioned the three big ones of Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Alex Ovechkin. I mean, those are the guys that you see in all of the marketing for the NHL. So, and they're the ones that everyone knows. So, obviously,
Yeah, I think for me, there's four guys in the NHL right now that I would definitively call superstars.
hmm
Obviously, Connor McDavid is incredible. I mean, 150 points last year, which you look at how much harder scoring is now than the era in which Gretzky and guys like Gretzky and Lemieux played. It's
hmm
entirely possible we are watching the GOAT right now with Connor McDavid. He is phenomenal. I agree. Crosby and Ovechkin are still superstars. They probably don't have a ton of time left
yeah,
as superstars, just given their age, but they still are those very recognizable
yeah,
names all over the league, branding and ads, like you said. I feel like somebody is still tuning into a game to watch Sidney Crosby play. Or the Penguins are in town. You're still buying a ticket thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to watch Sidney Crosby play hockey tonight. And he's still I mean, he had 93 points last
Mhm,
year. He's still really, really good. Alex Ovechkin had 42 goals last year. Now, the other issue that Ovechkin is going to run into is the Capitals weren't very good. I mean, the Penguins didn't make the playoffs either last year, but they were like the first team out.
mhm,
Actually, it's funny. Like if they hadn't lost, I think one game to the awful Blackhawks, then or maybe it's either Chicago or Montreal, then they would have made the playoffs instead of Florida. I think the
mhm.
Hurricanes probably would have liked that. But anyway, they're it's still easy to view Pittsburgh as a playoff contender. And we'll get into this later this month when we do our episodes taking stock of the divisions, taking stock of the conferences. It's hard. I think Washington is fading more than Pittsburgh is.
Yeah.
It's hard to see them making the playoffs this year. It's hard to see them making it back to the playoffs anytime soon, frankly, with how good the Eastern Conference is. But I think Alex Ovechkin has so much longevity as a star. If he's still scoring 40 to 50 goals a year, he's still going to be a superstar.
Mhm.
And then the fourth guy, I hesitated on this one because I talked about casual sports fans, especially in the United States. I don't know if casual sports fans know a ton about or are tuning in to watch Austin Matthews. I'm going to call him a superstar because
Yeah.
he's the face of obviously an original six team, one of the best teams in the NHL in the regular season, anyway, with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's an incredible player. I think he's got a 60 goal season under his belt, doesn't he?
I believe so,
I
yes.
think so. So, I mean, yeah, I would call him one. There's a few other guys that might be borderline, but given what we talked about with the marketing, with the branding, with the getting in front of casual fans, that's it for me.
Mhm.
That's it. Those four, that's the NHL superstars right now, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think all 4 of those guys for sure fall in there. I do have, a few other, like, borderline guys where I feel like, arguments could be made, but, I'll dive into those in a second. But, yeah, I think all 4 of those guys, 100% superstar level players. I think, with Crosby and Ovechkin, yeah, they're older, but they've carried so much weight. Their names have carried so much weight for so long. I feel they're just those guys that it was like Wayne Gretzky at the end of his career. Like, yeah, he wasn't putting up the numbers he used to, still a superstar, and he's still, someone that, you wanna go see play. Yeah, and, I think, those 2 guys, they're still guys they're still players that folks go to see play. And, and you look at Ovechkin now, how he's chasing that Gretzky record, that's something that folks are tuning in to see. You see it during the season of, "Oh, he scores this goal, he's this much closer now. He's at this point on the all-time goals list." And I think that's all 4 of those guys 100%. They are superstars. I think there are a few other borderline guys. I think he's obvious. I think Marc-Andre Fleury, I think he's up there. He's pretty recognizable name. I think he's definitely up there. You already mentioned Kucherov and Vasilevsky. I think they're up there, maybe not as well known, but I do definitely think, yeah, they're up there for sure. Folks, know who they are and what
Yeah.
they're capable of. I think let's see, who else do we have?
You
Um
could make an argument for Matthew Kachuk,
yeah,
especially with his
yep,
production and after the run that
yeah,
Florida
I would
just
say
made to the
Kachuk, yeah.
Stanley Cup final. I think he's a lot more recognizable.
Mhm.
Um, Nathan McKinnon and Kale McCarr are
Yeah,
both guys
those were
that you could
about to be
probably
guys
make
I was about to say.
arguments for. They won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago. Still very good, very productive players. So yeah, I think there's several borderline guys like you're talking about. But if
Mhm.
if we're go if we're talking like rock solid, I have no qualms, no arguments against calling this guy a superstar. Again, it goes down to McDavid, Matthews, Crosby, Ovechkin,
Mhm. Yeah,
at least for
yeah,
me.
I agree as well. I do think, I don't think he's at that superstar level anymore, as opposed to like Crosby and Ovechkin. But I do feel Patrick Kane at least deserves a mention.
It,
Again, he's definitely not the player he once was. Just injuries, catching up at that
well,
point.
at his peak,
But
he was most certainly a superstar
yeah, at his
when
peak,
the
he definitely
Blackhawks were
was,
winning
and his
cups.
and his name still carries weight. Folks still know who he is. But yeah, there's so we could be here all day talking about guys that have that potential. But again, definitely with the Hurricanes, Sebastian Aho and Andrei Svechnikov, those are the two guys that could really, in the next couple years, really take that jump. And I do think before we wrap things up that whenever Crosby and Ovechkin retire, because it's going to be sooner rather than later, I do think you will see a new crop of superstars. Again, you're still going to have McDavid and Matthews, still going to have those guys, but your two cash cows will have been retired. So the NHL they're gonna have to start marketing other folks. You know, I know you're not a wrestling fan, but with WWE for so long, they relied on the part timers, the folks that everyone knew their name. Like Brock Lesnar, the Undertaker, John Cena. They relied on those names, and they weren't building other stars. And then when these guys are retiring and winding down their careers, you don't necessarily have that main event level guy. You have guys that totally should be there, but you weren't marketing them as much as you should. It's definitely changing now with new folks in charge there, but it's one of those things. I definitely think when those two guys retire, we are going to see the NHL get behind some other guys, whether it be Aho, Svechnikov, Kachuk, whoever. I definitely think you are going to see that more.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree 100%.
And as far as to when that will be, who knows? Because these two guys, they clearly still have gas left in the tank. They're not retiring at the end of this coming season. I would highly doubt that, but we'll just have to wait and see how things end up shaking out. And like I said earlier, anyone can be a superstar. It doesn't matter, what your name is, where you're drafted. Anything can happen, and we'll just again. Maybe the next superstar for the Hurricanes isn't even someone we talked about, but we let us know your thoughts on this debate. Tweet at us on Twitter at LO_Hurricanes, myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96, and Andrew at A Schnitt 53. And we will talk to you guys in the next episode. And as always, folks, let's go Canes.